Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money, so we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now, on with the show.
Use your powers for evil.
Your evil is mine.
Hello, and welcome to a first of many Reverse the Polarity episodes of Next Stop Everywhere.
Yay.
That's right. In our journey of all things Hood'em, we are going to be reviewing and talking about classic Doctor Who episodes chosen by my lovely co-host, Charles Skaggs. Hey, Charles.
Hi, Jesse. How are you? I don't know how
I
lovely
am
I am, but I appreciate
yes.
the flattery.
Well, I think Ms. Doctor Who fanatic Lori would think you're pretty lovely.
Well, I appreciate that. Yes, thank you.
So
Well,
today we're going to talk.
she may get a little jealous with you on that, but
Yes, exactly. We are going to talk about a grounded TARDIS, a shower scene, a visit to a wax museum, and why does a Time Lord need a car? We're going to talk spearheads of space today. So why don't we start out with, I will do things a little different. I'll give you my thoughts first, and then we'll hear yours, and then we'll kind of talk the episode.
that sounds good because I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say about this episode.
You know, I have been hit and miss, as everyone knows, about watching classic Who episodes. And this one, I made sure there were no distractions. I had picked up the Blu ray from Amazon, and I was on a vacation day Friday, and I put it in the machine and played and focused on all 4 episodes, took some notes, enjoyed it, and I really liked it. And I also understand a little bit more of why Stephen Moffat said that in a way it was a pilot for a brand new Who series
Yeah,
because you had a new Doctor, it was in color, they
right.
changed the basic premise, but it is and I know I'm kind of sometimes you repeat yourselves. You know, you're like, yeah, that's. Um, I watched a couple of classic movies, and I was going, wow, this is really good, and there's a reason why it's classic. This was a perfect, from my perspective, start to a new Doctor. It really does a good job, and it sets the tone of the series. It sets the world. It builds the world. It builds the Doctor, and it was an entertaining story. So I was really happy with it.
I'm really glad to hear that because what all the reasons you just described are why I love this episode, and I thought it was a great first story to kind of get you into the classic Who mindset.
Yeah.
Um, it's some of the black and white ones because they're in black and white, they don't some may not appear as exciting. This one's like you said, it's the first one in color. This was the start of season 7 back in 1970, and Jon Pertwee's first story as the Third Doctor. So yeah, you've got introducing a whole bunch of things in this story. You've got the Doctor arriving on Earth. It's basically like a post regeneration episode. So he's recovering from the regeneration after Patrick Troughton's forced regeneration at the hands of the Time Lords in the previous story, the War Games. And then you have, like you've got the Brigadier. This isn't the first appearance of the Brigadier. The Brigadier actually appeared in a couple stories before this, primarily the Web of Fear. Um, but this is where his character was brought back as a supporting character for the idea of the Doctor's exile on Earth. And so therefore he needed kind of like a team around him to combat various menaces. So that's why they officially formed UNIT, and they brought in the scientist, basically like a scientist assistant to help the Doctor, which in this case is Liz Shaw. She's obviously very qualified. She's a very excellent scientist for
Mm-hmm.
1970. The Doctor respects her as a scientist. They get along famously. Um, so you've got a lot going on, and it's I think that plus you also get like the introduction of a new set of monsters in the form of the Autons, which which is pretty interesting in my opinion.
Yeah, I did not understand how mu- how often they use that villain, that
Mhm.
monster, and how I mean it is in several episodes because I'm doing some research after I watched, and I recognize when Rory became
Right.
one, and so that was kind of cool to see. You always think of the
Yeah.
Cybermen and the Daleks, but this is in its own way,
Hmm.
a pretty classic Doctor villain that has done well in the modern era.
Yeah, the Spearhead from space is just it's one of those things that yeah, maybe the Autons aren't as flashy as the Daleks or the Cybermen or the Master, but um, they are pretty interesting, and they've obviously lasted because like they do appear in another Third Doctor story, Terror of the Autons, which is just like four stories in after this one, in episode 5 of
Hmm.
Jon Pertwee's run. But then we don't really see them again until 2005 when Russell T Davies brings them back in Rose. And
Yeah.
so it was kind of nice, and because Rose kind of has that a little similar vibe to this story.
Yes, and that is a major, um, uh, you know, spoiler warning. This is because one of the things Charles has asked me to do is to do my own version of reverse the polarity and give, in my opinion, what is a modern era episode that reminds me, that is similar to this one. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. What I
Yeah,
found,
just forget what we just said,
yes,
and we'll talk about it
what
later.
I find incredibly interesting
Hmm.
is reverse the polarity of the neutron flow is the catchphrase of the Third Doctor. I did not
Yes,
know
that's what
that.
that's
Um,
yeah.
and so I think that's really cool because, in the 50th anniversary, they make the joke about we are both reversing the polarity and everything. And
Hmm.
so it was kind of like, wow, you mean Bart Simpson says I caramba? It was just a really cool thing to find
that
out.
Yeah, that's like you said, it's essentially his catchphrase. I think it was one of those things that where Jon Pertwee, like they had to give him some techno babble about what he's doing to like fix machinery or alter it somehow so that it can defeat a monster. And they came up with just like this just throwaway line that he's reversing the polarity of the neutron
Yeah.
flow, and that just stuck, and that's basically his. So you've had other doctors and numerous doctors just resetting that line, and as an homage to Pertwee's era, because it's almost like his definitive
Yeah.
trademark, shall we say.
Yeah. I also did not realize, and I now want to go find the classic episode there because they did a documentary on Robert Holmes, on one of
Hmm.
the classic episodes that they did a segment on him. I guess in a lot of people's minds, he is one of the greatest doctor writers of doctor stories. And if he isn't the
Yes.
greatest, he's in the discussion, according to what I've
Oh,
read.
yeah, yeah. Robert Holmes, who wrote this story, he's written some classic episodes. Um, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but just basically anything that really stands out in this era, primarily in the third and fourth Doctor eras. Like he also helped write the Trial of the Time Lord in Colin
Hmm.
Baker's era. That was basically like around the time that he died, um, and then Pip and Jane Baker had to finish his work on that
Yes,
storyline.
the
But
married couple that Mr.
yeah,
Schaefer does not enjoy.
yes, exactly. But yeah, you'll as we go through these classic episodes, you'll definitely hear Robert Holmes's name come up now and again. I'd say that like he's right up Terrence Dix, and obviously Douglas Adams are some of the three greatest Doctor Who writers of the classic era, and a lot of what they do and what they create has its impact on the Doctor Who we see today.
Yeah, absolutely. That was very, very cool. So, Charles, we're going to let you take lead. I have notes. I have some thoughts. So,
Okay.
why don't you
Okay.
take?
But we can do like a quick rundown of the episode if you want,
Sure,
or
absolutely.
okay. Okay. This because this is formatted differently than you see in classic Doctor Who today. It's four episodes, which essentially like are shorter. They're like half-hour episodes, so it boils down to like two classic episodes equals one modern day episode.
Right.
So when you're watching a four-part Doctor Who classic story, it's essentially like watching a two-part modern day story.
So that's going to
That-
be my first negative comment.
Yeah.
I think it drags a bit. I think because they had to stretch it over 4 episodes, there were
Hmm.
times when, and I won't say they were running in place, but it was not needed.
Right.
And I go back to, I was listening to a Nerdist Writers podcast, and I don't remember the writer, but he talked about watching some, like a Barnaby Jones episode. And,
Hmm.
the Buddy Epson gets out of the car, walks up the sidewalk, the steps to go to the front door. And he said it was 7 or 8 seconds that he says there's no way in modern writing we would waste that film time.
Right.
It would just cut to, because there's no dialogue
Yeah.
or anything. They would either
Yeah.
have two people talking or you would just show him at the door. So, um, and I realized that that is the nature of the storytelling at the time, and
Hmm.
um, and because you do have to fill 4 episodes, the four
Yeah.
segments, um, and they kind of have to do like the old serial, do a recap, at the beginning of each one, because they
Right.
weren't designed
To
to.
remind everybody of what,
Yeah, I mean they aren't.
yeah, they remind everybody of what
Yeah,
happened the
because
previous
they aren't
week.
designed to watch right in a row. They're designed once a week, right?
Right.
So
Essentially.
I
So,
didn't take a lot of points off, but I thought
hmm.
it was worth talking about that if you're going
Oh
to
yeah.
do this, you have to get your mind and remember storytelling at that point.
Right, and that's kind of important for anybody watching classic Doctor Who. You can't really apply modern day storytelling standards to these episodes. It's basically like watching an old movie on Turner Classic Movies. Like something from the like say the 60s or the 70s that you realize, okay, it obviously looks a little weird and the clothes are funny because they're not current, and the storytelling, the pacing's different. um, and a lot of older fans, when new Who, modern Who, first arrived on the scene in 2005, they were kind of critical of modern Who because it was so rushed. Because classic Who tends to, like, you've got the padding, or besides padding the episode, you've also got the room to let the story breathe, and you're not rushing. Like, you get to see things like the doctor saying goodbye to people, or you get little character moments that you may not get because you're trying to condense everything down to just 45 minutes. So it's kind of a six of one, half a dozen the other argument that, like, on the one hand, yes, there's a lot of time to kill sometimes, and they do kill it, and you're like, why can't you just tighten this up and maybe trim it out and make things tighter and faster paced? But by the same token, you get to see a lot of things you may not see in today's episodes. So it's one of that give and take that you just have to kind of adapt to, and some people can't, and that's fine. But that's kind of just the nature of the beast, really.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's the mindset you've got to get into, and that rhythm to understand that's what it is. So yeah, it was not hard for me to get past stuff. I just thought, and
Yeah,
it's something to bring up
yeah.
as we discuss.
Yeah. And one last thing I want to add is in this topic is that, with classic episodes, you get cliffhangers.
Yes.
And back in the day, Doctor Who, especially during the Jon Pertwee, Tom Baker's era, Peter Davison, you had great cliffhangers to get you back next week, because, yeah, it was a more serialized storytelling. It was broken up in either like 4-part episodes, 6-part episodes, sometimes even 2-part episodes, but you still had that cliffhanger. Like in, for example, modern day episode, The Stolen Earth, where, like the 10th Doctor gets shot,
Hmm.
and there's that kind of like, you think he's dead and he's about to regenerate, and you're like, you see that to be continued,
Yeah.
doom, doom, doom. And you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen to the doctor? I have to wait till next week.
Right.
No. And so that's basically what they were going for back then. And some of the cliffhangers are fantastic, some are less so. But you get that, and that's where a lot of older fans kind of lament in the modern Who, because we don't see as many cliffhangers. They do can exist, but not nearly as prevalent as they used to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so why don't we run just through this real quick,
Okay.
as time permits? But so basically, the story starts off on Earth as the Doctor, this newly regenerated Doctor, arrives in a shower of meteorites that are striking Earth. And he falls out of his first time we see the Doctor. We get just a glimpse of him as he falls out of the TARDIS and collapses in the woods. So, the but like, and then from there we cut to unit headquarters, where uh, the Doctor's best friend, Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart, in his prime, not nearly the Cyberman he is this season,
Yes.
but you get a taste of, like, the man he used to be, and why the Doctor, respects him so much, is that he's meeting with Elizabeth Shaw, who is a noted science expert. She has, like, like, I guess, several scientific degrees, and she's interviewing for the post of unit's scientific advisor with the brigadier. The doctor, or excuse me, the brigadier kind of explains unit to her and to the audience. Just basically setting it up as, like, they explain the strange and the odd, and so it's almost like, like the X Files of its day, way
Yeah.
back in the day.
So one of my notes was Miss Shaw meeting the Brigadier was greatness. I love she really didn't want to be as part of this. I love um, I liked the horns on this soundtrack, and now the soundtrack is a little dated. It feels very
Hmm.
much like the late 60s, early
1970s.
70s TV show.
Right.
But and I love Liz. I have an important research project in Cambridge, and we hear the brigadier talking about doctor, and then they cut off, like, speak of the devil and he will appear, right? We get the idea
Right.
of the doctor showing up at the hospital, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very, it is a very cool, as I've talked about before.
Introduction.
Yeah, we're setting things up very well,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they aren't showing, they aren't making it so that you're showing that I'm having to do it. It's not an effort. It is just by telling the story, they're kind of explaining what's happening and setting the tone. So really good stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like Matt Smith's first episode, The 11th Hour, where you're getting a lot of exposition, introducing characters, situations, relationships, and it feels almost like a brand new show.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so basically, like you said, the doctor turns up in this hospital. The brigadier gets the call, goes to check out, like, it's like that there was a police box found. So obviously, the brigadier, having met the second doctor previously in the Web of Fear, he's like, maybe I better go check this out. So he goes there, uh, brings Liz with him, and the brigadier, I guess, doesn't recognize the doctor. He turns over, like, the doctor, and he sees the doctor's face, and he's like, okay, who's this guy? Because the doctor I knew didn't look a thing like you. He was much shorter, had like dark beetle haircuts, and he looked like a cosmic hobo, and you don't. So I don't
Mm.
know who you are, but the thing is, though, the doctor knows him, and
Yes.
recognizes him, and that puts a little bit of suspicion in the brigadier's mind, because, like, why does the doctor or this guy know who I am? I've never met him before.
And what I found out in reading is that the concept, the term regeneration had not been used yet. They had
No.
established that the doctor can change, but they hadn't figured out what they were going to call it.
Right.
And so I thought that was interesting. And also, the idea of the doctor, the regeneration taking something out of him,
Hmm.
is, I think, is established, and they've shown that, if I remember correctly, not consistently, but they've done it pretty much in the modern era, that it takes something out of the doctor when he regenerates, and he
Yeah.
needs to rest, he needs transition time.
Yeah. And it's good because it kind of lets them dole out this new doctor a piece at a time, because you're like, okay, he's up, he's he's interacting, and then, oh, guess what, he's unconscious
Hmm.
again. So therefore, and you've got everybody around him wondering, what the hell's going on.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and it gives a little bit of mystery, because you're like, oh, what's going to happen to him? Is he okay? And so it's kind of like a gradual weaning process into this new
Yes.
Doctor era.
Yeah, and I like that a lot.
So yeah, um, so turns out that there's there's a series. This kind of becomes like almost like a news story, because like there's like reports of a man or a man from space in the hospital. So like the press swarm in and start asking questions at the hospital. And meanwhile, this kind of creepy guy, with a very like unsettling look on his face, kind of bug-eyed stare, named Channing. He kind of walks in with them, and then I guess later on he has his associates try to kidnap the doctor, and we're not sure why yet.
Exactly.
So he tries to kidnap the doctor, and as they're trying to load him into an ambulance, the doctor's like, "Okay, screw you guys. I'm taking this wheelchair that you put me in, and I'm bugging out of here."
Filled with chase music. I mean, it
Yes,
is a chase scene in a wheelchair, including the
yes.
appropriate chase music.
So yeah, and basically, like, Pertwee's like, just barreling down the hill in a wheelchair, like going pretty
He is,
fast. So that was a
and he's
pretty good
he's
stunt.
like using just one wheel to kind of turn and just
Yeah,
adjust, and
like,
it's
yeah, it's pretty
it
good for a
is.
wheelchair. And but of course, obviously it runs out of road and kind of crashes in the woods. So like he's like looking for his TARDIS because he's managed to procure his
Yes.
key from a secret compartment in
Right.
his shoes. And because he was really interested in wanting to get his shoes back for that
Yes.
reason. So what he did, he got his key and he's looking for the TARDIS and where he left it so he can escape. But ends up, oh, what happens? There's a couple of unit soldiers, and then one of the pinheads decides, oh, I'm going to shoot this guy,
Yeah.
and he shoots him, and then we go to the
Right.
first cliffhanger, with the
Now,
so
when Clara was getting all the TARDIS keys, did she go in a shoe?
I would laugh at see that would have been a great Easter egg to have one of the TARDIS keys in a shoe
Okay,
somewhere.
that would have been really, really funny.
I think that was a missed opportunity by Stephen Moffat.
Yes. Yeah, so it was but a really nice first episode. And you've got the feeling of we haven't talked about the guy in the field,
Yeah,
stealing the meteorite and
right. Yeah,
everything.
he's like some local yokel
Yeah.
guy.
Yes.
Yeah, named
And so
Sealy.
it
Named
was,
Sealy.
yes, it was very, very, so a really good first. When I talk about pacing, this had no pacing problems.
Yeah,
This, I think, was solid. It set the Doctor's tone.
yep.
You're getting good information. You're
You're
setting
off
up
and
the
running.
villain. Yeah, you are off and running or rolling, as the case may
Yeah,
be.
nice. Very well played. So yeah, so we move on to like episode 2,
Yes.
and um, we open with like after the doctor is we find out that, oh, guess what, well, he just got grazed on the forehead, but guess what, he's more comatose than ever. So well done, unit.
Yes.
And the brigadier is not happy. And so like I guess later on the Liz and the brigadier end up like debating the whole existence of aliens because Liz she's like the Dana Scully of
Yes.
1970. She's like skeptical as hell. She's like, like wondering about, like she makes a joke, like, she's like, really, this guy can travel about in a police box? What's up with that? Really?
Yes.
You're kidding me, right? This is a put on.
Now, one I thought funny moment, and the rotary phones were great. The police, the pay phones, but the doctor
Right.
going, "I'm gonna do an EEG." An
Yeah.
EEG? What's that?
What's that?
This,
Yeah.
and when,
But you got to remember, but like
yeah,
1970, they're not as prevalent as they are
yeah,
today.
and
So yeah,
also, what's funny is, in modern medical shows or modern TV at all, they just do, the medical techno babble, and they just go
hmm
on CBC, da 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 da, stat. And so,
yeah.
this one, it was just very funny.
The Yeah, it was. I totally agree with you.
Now,
Let's
Charles,
see
I,
what.
I
So,
do want to say, and to
hmm
lead you to where the next step, the
yeah,
scenes of the factory where they're making the little baby dolls,
yeah,
very creepy. It
yes.
was,
Because those kind of dolls are kind of creepy by themselves,
yes,
but then just to see their like little heads
yes.
and being formed, and then there's a pile, like a whole big box of the
Yeah.
heads,
I mean,
and
and that was deliberate. I mean, because with the mood music and the way they filmed it,
yeah,
they wanted that to look
yeah.
creepy and dangerous and everything, and they did a great job.
Yeah, because I mean, and you got to keep in mind that yeah, these are basically they were trying to the creators of Doctor Who at the time were trying to scare the hell out of little kids
Yes.
as much as they could.
Hmm.
They were watching the show with their parents,
Right.
with the intent of like having them hide behind the couch
Yes.
in fear, hide behind the sofa rather.
Yes.
And so yeah, we get our first look at an Auton, um,
Hmm.
as he's like gets activated as when this like you said, Sealy. He basically opens up his trunk, and then the signal from this globe came down in the meteorites begins to emit this signal. So yeah, that basically triggers an Auton in the area. He's like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna go look for you now."
Mm-hmm.
So we get a glimpse of this creepy looking, like his face looks like a doll's head
Yes.
almost. It's very blank. There's you can't really see his eyes. He's got kind of a clammy, plasticky look on his face.
And
Um,
it,
but he does have an
yes,
ascot. So well
it
done there,
reminds
because
me,
it's
yes,
British. You're gonna have an
it
ascot.
reminds me of on the old Batman show False Face.
Yes.
When he wasn't in disguise, he would have that kind of plastic over, kind of facial shield.
Cut.
So
Yeah.
that's what it reminded me, which is really cool looking.
Yeah. Yeah. So we get just a little taste of the Autons in the second
Hmm.
episode. Um, Meanwhile, we get this general named Scobie who arrives at Unit HQ. And Liz basically gives some snark to him because he's asking about the police box in the corner. She's like, "Oh, didn't you know? It's a camouflage spaceship."
Yes, which it is, but she doesn't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
But she's just like, like, yeah, dude, he says it's a camouflage spaceship. What does he
Yeah.
know? He's kidding. This guy is crazy. So they have a good laugh, or she has a good laugh over this. Meanwhile, the doctor wakes up from his self induced coma, apparently, and decides to go looking for some outfits. He goes into this doctor's changing room at the hospital. And like he sneaks in there and he takes a shower to make it look like he's one of the doctors at the
Mhm.
hospital. He's singing away, and we get to see Jon Pertwee's navel tattoo on his arm. If you pay
Yes.
close attention,
Um,
it's kind of like a little Easter egg, because actually the story is that John, when he was in the Navy, apparently he got really drunk one night and woke up with a tattoo of a cobra on his arm. So, so they've tried to explain it away in some novels, like Doctor Who novels, that that was just some mark that the Time Lords put on the Doctor to show that he's in
right.
exile. Yeah, wink,
Yeah.
wink.
Which is actually
So
a pretty decent, um, if you follow the rules, when you go to nitpick, you want to use not just try to, within the scope of the show, explain something like that. And that's actually a pretty good version. I thought it was kind of funny because it actually is a little more, um, they shot toward the rear end a little closer than I would have thought would have in 1970. You know?
yep, yeah, yeah, you get a little
Yes,
cheek
you
there.
do. Way to go.
Just a little bit,
Yes.
but not enough. Yeah, they're a little bit more
Mhm.
liberal over there than we are here, because we're uptight
Right.
Puritans who,
Yes.
yeah. So, like, oh no, there's like a slight hint of tush.
Hmm.
Gotta blur that out.
Yes.
So yeah, we freak out over silly things over here. Um, but yeah, so the doctor gets out of the shower when he has a moment, and he takes some of the doctor's clothes.
Yes.
And he basically dons this very formal, almost like opera garb.
Hmm.
There's like a cape to it.
Yes.
Um, and so it makes him much more dapper. For a while there, he has a hat, but he gets rid of
Yeah.
it, which is a good thing, because the hat really wasn't working. So,
So,
but yeah, so this is basically, the idea is that this is kind of like his prototype doctor costume. So he's a much more dapper doctor than what we saw previously with Patrick
mhm.
Troughton's Cosmic Hobo.
What is your feelings on this? Because I've established early on that one of the
Hmm.
things I love about the modern era is that they have a classic clothes. They aren't, I mean, it's not a modern era, but it is um, fairly, conservative clothes that do not look outlandish. And like this with the cape and the frilly
Yeah,
tie is just a little bit outlandish to me.
yeah. Well, you also have to kind of keep in mind that the British love
Okay.
eccentrics. And the actual owner of these clothes, He's very obviously an eccentric
Right.
guy. Okay, like you said, he's walking around with a opera cape
Mm-hmm.
on, and he's driving around in a little
Yes.
roadster that the doctor
Yes.
procures as his own to make his escape. And basically, this car is like a prototype. Another prototype for Bessie, which is the doctor's own car that he modifies
Mm-hmm.
in various ways to do numerous cool things that in later Third Doctor stories plays a big part, and even plays a part in the Five Doctors 20th anniversary special.
Yes.
So he kind of gets the idea of like, ooh, this car is pretty
Yes.
cool, and he wants one of his own later on. So um, whether he gets one or not, I guess yes, he gets his own
Yes.
car, and it's pretty.
Spoilers.
And Bessie's kind of again, this is another Third Doctor staple that other doctors actually have not replicated. But yeah, we actually do see Bessie again in the Seventh Doctor era in the episode
Mm-hmm.
Battlefield. So she makes a nice return there, and it's kind of like a nice big hug for old school Doctor Who fans.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Meanwhile, the Brigadier's trying to decides to use this key that he's procured from the Doctor and tries to get in the TARDIS, but guess what? Doesn't work for him. Sorry. Thanks for playing. And the Doctor, meanwhile, is heading right for Unit HQ. Demands to see the Brigadier right off the bat. And the reason we find out how he was able to find the place so easily is that, oh, guess what? I've got a watch,
Yes.
and it just happens to home in the TARDIS, which is right there. So thanks, guys.
Yes.
And so he's like, "I'll take my key now."
Yes.
And but the Brigadier isn't quite willing to fork that over.
Absolutely. He is not. And I thought the watch was pretty funny. This whole, hey,
Yeah.
I just so
Yep.
happen to have one of these. Very, very cool.
It's my convenient plot device
Yes.
watch that I get solve
Yes.
this dilemma of how do I get to Unit HQ to get my
Well,
TARDIS
and
back. Yeah.
it is the sonic screwdriver does that anyway, right?
Right. Right. But he doesn't have a
No, he
sonic screwdriver
doesn't.
here because his clothes have been
Right.
taken away, so he doesn't have one.
Hmm.
But so while he's there, he meets Liz. The doctor meets Liz, which is cool because they get along pretty well because she's a scientist, he's a scientist. Hey, go nuts, guys! And by the way, we've got a mystery here with these meteorite fragments. Um, and the doctor's, this obviously gets his um, a little curiosity up because he's like, okay, what's up with these meteorite fragments that came down when I landed on Earth? It's kind of coincidental, don't
Right.
you think? So there's got to be a mystery here. Um, so the doctor tries to get Liz to that he basically cons her and says, "Oh yeah, I need some equipment from my TARDIS. So could you get the key from the Brigadier, be a dear, and get that for me, would you?" And so Liz goes to try to get the key from the Brigadier, but he's like, "I don't know about that. Oh, I'm just busy talking to this guy named Ransom, who just is really freaking out right now because he just ran across some Autons."
Yes.
And so I want to deal with him. So while the Brigadier's dealing with Ransom, Liz nicks the key and goes off to give it to the doctor. Even though it's like this guy she just met,
Yes.
but she goes ahead and gives it to him. Um, I guess she gets a vibe from him,
Uh,
maybe. Who knows?
um,
But
so a little bit unhappy with the doctor that he was
hmm
gonna just leave so quickly. Um,
Bale, yeah, it's his first thought
yes.
is to leave.
Um,
Yeah.
I also was a little sad, and I understand the reason why, but you you could understand if they wanted to, you could have had the TARDIS as a set and had him work out of that.
hmm
But instead, he's working out of the lab. Because you
Yeah.
show that he can go in the TARDIS. Little disappointed we didn't get but it's bigger in the inside.
Yeah.
We don't get
Right.
that line. So very, very cool. Um, and it is a funny thing when he tries to take off and it doesn't
Yeah.
work well at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. Basically, yeah, it's like the big Price is
Yeah.
Right fail music should be playing.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, because yeah, he tries to he because the key works for the doctor because it's got a metabolism detector and can detect the doctor's
Right.
metabolism. So great name, but so it's able to work for him. So he goes inside and yeah, he starts up the TARDIS and it's like smoke starts coming out and it's like you know
Yeah.
so he gets out of the TARDIS and he realizes at this point, I think the doctor realizes that the Time Lords have used their powers to remove the dematerialization codes from his mind, so he's not able to activate the TARDIS. So therefore, I think at this point he's like, "Oh crap! They exiled me here on Earth in 1970. Come on, not even a cool decade like the 1980s."
So yeah, it's
So
so funny. Um, that hand wave, right?
yeah,
The what? And what do you mean? But very well done. Setting up the idea that, this is going to be a different kind of doctor.
yeah, because this exile lasts for 3 whole
Yes.
seasons before events of the Three Doctors 10th anniversary special. So so basically like the doctor's forced to like accept this whole notion that he's stuck on Earth. So he's realizing quickly he has to adapt and like he's going to have to like, need resources to figure out what the hell's wrong with
Yeah.
his TARDIS so that he can escape. He can't just like up and leave. So he's like, "Oh crap, what do I do?" And meanwhile you've got Liz and the Brigadier going, "We've got this
Yeah.
mystery. Could you please help us
Yeah.
out with this?" So he's like, "Okay, I guess I'll help you out with
I
this."
did like that, kind of jumping ahead, when they do the
Yeah.
whole money, I need no money. And you're like, what? So I guess he's
Yeah.
using
I
the
don't care
food
about money.
processor in the triathlon, in the TARDIS. Yeah.
Well, yeah, yeah, he's got a food. He does. He does have a food
Yes.
generator machine or whatever. Like, yeah, basically like the thing they had on
Yes.
Star Trek.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So But so anyway, so like the Brigadier, the Liz, and the Doctor go to check out this. They go to Seeley's house looking for that globe, and there's an Auton there, and so they deal with the Auton. And you basically like they try to shoot the Auton, but he's bulletproof. He can't be killed, but he takes off, but they get the globe, okay, and so they bring it back to Unit HQ, and the doctor's like, like there's like all this stuff sent around this plastics factory. We need to check this
Yes.
thing out because obviously something's going down there, so we got to figure that out. And he's like, the doctor figures out that this globe has some kind of mental activity going on. So you're like, okay, what's going on? There's something very alien about this in the more than we know about these globes. They're obviously very important. Um, and then General Scobie, who we were introduced earlier, he's like at his house and he ends up getting attacked by an exact duplicate of him who's rather plastic looking
Mhm.
in appearance. And there's another cliffhanger there. So it's like, uh-oh, are they replacing General Scobie? What's up with
Yes.
that? So the Doctor and Liz they find out that these globes are part of some collective intelligence, and they get a tip that like the plastics factory was shipping these replicas, these kind of like wax duplicate replicas to Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. So they go there, they check it out, they find all these government officials, and then who happens to be there but
Yes.
Scobie? And it's like, okay, well, is that the duplicate or is that the real Scobie? And so the doctor goes like, hmm. So he checks out Scobie, being a little awkward, like he's really looking up at this duplicate. He figures out, oh yeah, there's like there's this watch. And it's like, well, why would they, go to the detail of putting a watch on? That's pretty impressive. But then why would they go to the trouble of winding it up and having it keep correct time?
Hmm.
So it's like, so you're like,
Yeah,
why do, if he's really a wax figure, why would they go to that much trouble? So he's a little
and that
suspicious
was a
there.
really good clue. Yeah, I found
Deduction.
that kind of interesting. Really, I love the, and I keep saying this, but the spooky.
Yeah.
You know, I really
The,
like how they're using, um, the sets, or they're on location, the mood, the way they're imaging, really well done.
the atmosphere the
Yes,
atmosphere is
exactly.
very creepy, and yeah, yeah, with the music lighting, like, because the doctor, like, they decide to hang out. They basically hide out until closing
Right.
time, so it's all dark and spooky, because you're like, oh, you're not supposed to be there anyway because it's after
Hmm.
closing time. So like, they go there, or they come out of hiding, and then, like, that creepy guy Channing was there, and once he leaves, they confront, like, this other guy named Hibbert, and they realize that, this guy's under this kind of mental control, possibly, but under Channing's control.
Hmm.
So he's like, the doctor tries to persuade him to resist, and Hibbert's basically like, well, I don't know, I'll think
Hmm.
about it. So the after they leave there, they go to warn the brigadier that these facsimiles, or, these duplicates, have, like, got up and walked out by themselves. Which, okay, that's not something you really see every day, is these wax dummies coming to life and walking out of the museum.
Yes.
So something that's just a little
Right.
freaky, that these things are coming, but we don't know
Hmm.
why yet. And so the doctor immediately sits down with Liz. They go start to work on this device. We don't know what it does, but it's really important to the doctor to get this thing done. So they're, like, working on it overnight. But here it is come morning, and what happens? Like, at various storefronts all across town and all across the various cities across England, um, that um, these storefront mannequins,
Yeah.
like fashion dummies, whatnot, they start coming to life and start bursting through the windows in very dramatic fashion. And what do? Immediately, they start killing people in the
Yes.
street.
Um,
So it's another good, wholesome episode of
yeah,
Doctor
and
Who.
one of the things that I really, really enjoyed is a the cuts to the victims. Charles can see me, and you guys can't. But they do the close up of the face, and they
Yeah, the fear, the utter fear and horror as they
yes,
get shot.
exactly.
That the Autons coming for them, and then it's like,
Yes.
"Arg!" Yeah,
Mhm.
it's great. That's just This is one of those classic charms
Absolutely.
of
Yes.
old school episodes. But and like, classic Who fans, like, just, it's so much fun just to watch monsters killing
Yes,
people for no
exactly.
reason whatsoever, just because they're monsters and
Yeah,
they're
there is
jerks.
no reason. Just, they're walking along, and
Random
yes.
violence.
And all of us have been startled by a mannequin. Like when it's behind you or the side, and oh, okay, it's just a mannequin. It's,
Yeah.
not a person. So
And they're inherently
they
creepy
are.
anyway. So the idea of these things coming to life and
Hmm.
trying to kill you as their hands come down, and you realize, oh, guess what? There's guns underneath those
Yes.
hands, and then start firing,
Yes.
pew pew pew.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's great. But the let's see what happens. Oh, like, we find out from creepy Channing that this intelligence is basically this alien force called the
Hmm.
Nestines, and he sicks his pet Auton and kills Hibbert. So bye,
Yes.
Hibbert. See you later. You were completely useless. Well done. Um, uh, you know, the doctor, Liz, and the brigadier, they get there with the unit troops. They start raid. Finally, after all this, 3 episodes later, they raid the plastics
Yes.
factory. So, things are starting to go down. Uh, the creepy fake Scoby confronts the doctor, and he's like, trying to order the brigadier's men to put their weapons down. And so the doctor takes the device, which has this, like, little microphone, like, little attachment, and is like, oh, like, he's like, it's some kind of, like, microphone with a recorder. to like he tries to like act like he's from the press, and he tries to interview General Scobie. You have anything
Yeah.
to say? And into this wonderful, yeah, microphone, wink,
Hmm.
wink. And what happens? They flip on the machine, and it takes out fake Scobie, and he's revealed as this, just a fake Auton. And meanwhile, this causes the real Scobie to wake up in a wax museum, going, "What am I
Yes.
doing here? What's up with
Exactly.
this?" Awkward. So that was kind of
Was.
cool. But so that leads to like the first big shootout between like unit soldiers fighting it out with the Autons. Like there's guns and like stuff's blowing up, and the Autons are firing back. Pew pew pew, and it's that little chaos that kind of becomes a staple of the Third Doctor era with like unit soldiers, and obviously it's something we've seen in the modern era, like with like in the Suntaran stratagem and stuff like that, that we see unit soldiers fighting against the
Hmm.
monsters. So or like Planet of the Dead, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and
So
one of the
yeah.
cool things is unit is respected. Everyone kind of see, it's like they're the FBI or the
Yeah.
marshals. It is something that everyone seems to recognize and everyone seems to respect.
Yeah, back then, before everybody got all trademark happy, UNIT used to be called the Nations Intelligence
Okay.
Task Force. That's what UNIT stood for. Now it's the Unified Intelligence Task Force because somebody at the United Nations made a
Hmm.
phone call or sick their
Yeah.
lawyers or something. They said, "Oh, you can't use that,"
Right.
something like that. So there's that change. So back then they were part of the
Hmm.
United Nations, and they were a formally recognized
Right.
agency with the ability to do cool stuff and shoot
Mhm.
shoot monsters,
Good.
which is good. So so yeah, there's this big fight. The Doctor confronts Channing. He tries to use the device on him and the Nestines, which is like this big like rubbery looking monster in a tank.
Yes, it is.
Um, yeah,
We talked about the octopus in a previous episode, and
yeah,
here we have another, all the arms, and
yeah.
it's choking the doctor,
Yeah,
and yeah,
flailing. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, it's like, and yeah, the doctor's getting choked, and he's like looking over, like, Liz, how about you fix that device really quickly because I'm getting like strangled
yes,
here, please, really, come on. What's it? So Liz, of course, fixes the device in the nick
yes,
of time, and they switch it on. The Nestines die. The Autons shut off. Channing's revealed as this Auton. So he must have been like a really sophisticated Auton because he's kind of independent as opposed to just being drone-like. Um, so the day is
yeah,
officially
and what's
saved.
very cool is the companion does the saving, right? I mean, the doctor was
Hmm.
in trouble. Yes, I mean now
Essentially,
he
well,
he
the
created
doctor,
the
the
device,
doctor
yes,
invented the
but
device,
um, yes,
and
she
Liz
did help,
helped. But when it came down to it, it's like it was all up to Liz, and Liz steps up
absolutely.
to the plate and proves herself. Proves her worth to the doctor. So
Hmm.
yeah. So Liz is like, hey,
Yes,
good job.
good.
It's Miller time. So, but so yeah, so after all that's said and done, everybody's back at Unit HQ. The Brigadier was like, like, what happens if the Nestines come back? Can we count on your help, or are you going to try and
Mhm.
split on us again? Um, and the doctor, is like, we'll pay you. And the
Yeah.
doctor's like you said earlier, that the doctor's like, I don't want money. I
Mhm.
don't care about money. Um, he's like, all I want is like facilities, equipment to repair the TARDIS, Liz's help, because she's obviously got some skills, more
Yeah.
than the rest of you monkeys. So, so like that's all I want. And then he's like, oh yeah, I borrowed these clothes. They're not mine. And the car, can I get another car like that? So he hits the Brigadier up for a
Yes.
car. So yeah, we start. It's basically the tease that we're gonna get. The doctor is going to have some kind of ride, and we find out later that
Hmm.
it's Bessie. So this little yellow roadster that of his own that he modifies to go like at really fast speeds and do cool things. So and then lastly, we leave with the Brigadier like going, "Oh yeah, by the way, we got to fill out all this paperwork, but I don't know your
Hmm.
name." So at this point, we get a very important, moment because the doctor assumes a very important alias for the first time, and he tells the brigadier Smith, Dr.
Yes.
John Smith.
Yeah, that was I knew from the modern era that, the doctor had used that name in the past. So that was cool to
Hmm.
see him do that. And I as
And that was basically like the
yeah,
really first time it was majorly used. And so that's something that doctors have been using ever since. Every so often you'll hear him, like whenever he needs a name to use, he uses the name John
right.
Smith as his like form, because people like, oh, it's kind of a bland name, but it's like, okay, it's a name, so
Yes.
get off my back. You don't have to just call me
hmm
doctor.
Yeah, so it really is a great introduction to the doctor. You set up, as I'm repeating myself, but it just really is, we now
Mhm.
know that the doctor's going to work with Unit. He is going to have Liz there with him. And the brigadier and him, a nice bantering back and forth. You did not see a lot of anger toward the police part of it, the soldier part of it. So I assume that comes later.
Yeah. Well, it's sometimes because yeah, the next episode, um, which is
hmm
it's called the Silurians, and which like we meet again in the 11th Doctor era, with
Yes.
the Hungry Earth, that episode. Okay, so this is the first time we meet the Silurians in the next story, and it's a very brutal episode. It has a very brutal finale. Without giving too much away, basically that story shows how cruel
hmm
the military can be at times, and it really kind of sets the doctor off. And so it's the doctor and the brigadier's first kind of real
Okay.
ethical conflict. And so and every so often you'll
Okay.
get a hint of that. Um, it's the recent 12th Doctor stuff where he's got really hard
hmm
issues with soldiers. Um, it hasn't been to that extreme. He's had issues with soldiers, yes, but they haven't been like bitter. Like there's no way I want
Yeah.
a soldier on the TARDIS, or at least the Doctor
Okay.
hasn't expressed that until the 12th Doctor era. So there are seeds of it. It's not. Yeah, there's a lot of comparisons, obviously, with appearance and mannerisms between the Third Doctor and the 12th Doctor. I mean, because sometimes, if you've watched future Third Doctor stories, you'll see that Pertwee's Doctor is a little brusque at
hmm
times. He's a little snippy. He's a little arrogant, condescending. So a lot like the 12th Doctor in a lot of ways. So the two have very good comparisons. So if you're really into the 12th Doctor, that's kind of why I wanted to start off with the Third Doctor, because I thought it would be a nice
And
transition.
he is, he's very active. Based
Hmm.
on the Meet the Doctor specials they did for the 50th episode, 50th anniversary, they talked about him
Hmm.
being very much a uh, more of a physical doctor. So I think
Hmm.
that's really cool. This is I don't think you could have picked a better episode to start our journey through classic
Good.
Who. What else do we need to cover? Because we need to do our lines and our
Yeah,
ratings.
yeah, we got to
Yes.
wrap. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
I think that pretty much covers it. Like
Yes.
you said, we are running a little long, so
Okay.
we probably want to wrap things up. So Jesse, what was your favorite line of
Um
the episode? Let's start with you.
I love Liz's line. You really believe in a man who has helped to save the world twice with the power to change his physical appearance? An alien who travels through time and space in a police box?
Yeah, and I love the way that she delivers that line. She's like,
Yes.
in a police box.
I
Oh,
didn't write
like,
it down, but one of the earlier she talked about,
yeah,
little blue men with three
yeah,
heads or something. So,
y-
yeah, she's a really cool companion.
yeah. She's good. We don't get to see Liz much, unfortunately. She's only in the first season of episodes.
Okay.
So she's only like 4 stories. They're long stories because they're like after this episode, there's 7 parts. There are 3 7-part stories.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's kind of a so so they're pretty long. So we get a good feel for her. I mean,
Okay.
so she doesn't just go immediately away.
Okay.
Yeah, she doesn't. She only stays on the for season 7,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Good.
But
And how
she's great.
about you?
My favorite line was when the doctor first meets Liz, and she's asking him, "What are you a doctor of?" And he's like, "Practically everything."
Yes, that is
And that's
such a great
line.
line, and
Yeah,
it is so very much,
doctorish.
yeah,
Yes.
very doctorish.
Yep.
Um,
So, what was your rating for the episode?
so I gave it 7
Okay.
and a half ringing meteorites because
Nice.
I kept thinking the meteor sounded like a
Ring
phone.
phone. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
funny.
Um, and it is really, really enjoyable. So I think with a little pacing, it might have gone up to 8,
Hmm.
but 7.5. So very, very pleased.
Okay,
And you,
but
Charles?
Uh, uh, I because this is one of my favorite. This is actually my favorite Jon Pertwee story.
Hmm.
I can watch this story over and over again. It never gets old to me because it's basically like a great introduction. It's kind of a definitive Doctor story, like
Okay.
because you've got monsters, you've got companions, everything's kind of thrown in here, and it's a fun episode. It's a fun introduction. Jon Pertwee's great as the Doctor.
Yes.
He gets even better, but he just hits the ground running. Um, and like I said, he's just such a good actor, and
Yes.
he really embraces the role. He kind of takes it to his heart,
Hmm.
and it's great to see it. So now that we've done
No,
this,
what you didn't give your number though.
oh, my number
Yeah.
9 out of 10. Autons breaking out of storefront windows.
Very nice. Very cool.
Yes.
Um, I can see, and I think this will be the case in all these classic episodes, but you can see why someone would have this as their doctor.
Yes.
You could see why they would hold this person with affection in their heart, which is, I think, one of the reasons why we want to go down this journey is to
Right.
kind of see through the other people. Um, so I'm going to go the obvious, but it really, because I really said, don't go the obvious. Don't pick the 11th hour.
Hmm.
Don't pick, a regeneration episode. But Rose is almost a reboot of this episode.
Yeah. Essentially, it's a remake.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it's its own tone and its own thing, but it is so much in similar, even
Hmm.
down to the same villain.
Hmm.
They have the it's the first appearance of Doctor. It sets up the world, the dynamics between the companion and the Doctor. I mean,
Right.
everything we said about this one, Rose does that in the modern era.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I'm right down to the Autons busting out of storefront windows
Yes.
and killing people.
Right. It
You
is
know.
just, and I don't know. You and I remember when Star Trek The Next Generation came
Hmm.
on the air the first time, and there was some criticism of them redoing some of the classic Trek, themes and episodes.
Right.
So I don't know if I had been a classic Who fan, would
Yeah.
I have been offended that this is just a retelling of Spearhead of Space, or
Yeah.
would I've said, oh, this is great. They've kind of taken this theme and made it their own. So did you have any feelings when it came on?
My somewhat, but the thing is though, with Rose, it was the first episode of Doctor Who we had seen since 1996.
Yeah.
So that's like, geez, like
9 years?
9 years, nine
Yeah.
years we had seen it since we'd seen Doctor Who on television. So it was more of just like, oh, thank God Doctor Who's on. We didn't care but it was cool because we liked it because like, hey, we haven't seen the Autons since Jon Pertwee's era,
Mhm.
so that was cool. It's great that they're still up to their old tricks.
Yeah.
Um, And with the story, because of like Russell T Davies wanting to introduce Rose and Jackie and Mickey, that you really didn't have time to do like a really get into a monster. So you kind of had to like have a quick monster that everybody could kind of get to know up to speed really
Hmm.
quickly and deal with quickly. Again, because of the short running time, because it's only 45 minutes as
Hmm.
opposed to back then when it would have
Yeah.
been 4 episodes, would have totaled up to an hour and a half.
And it's a good job. I am not a fan of horror.
Hmm.
Just not something. That's why I haven't read, the Constantine comics. Plug for
Blasphemy.
your, podcast. But and my wife, Linda goes, "Why do you watch The Walking Dead? Because you don't watch zombie movies. You don't do anything." I said, "But
Mhm.
it's so well done."
The drama,
Yeah, the drama is so well done
right?
that
Well,
I enjoy it.
well acted and well
Yes.
executed.
And so I think this was it too.
Yeah,
I would imagine as a classic Who fan, you're like, wow, they're respecting this
yeah,
show. They're
right.
giving good production values, great
Hmm.
actors, a good story. They've taken everything that we've loved out of the classic series and shinied up and made it clean and bright and just made
Yep.
it wonderful.
Yeah, you
So,
don't have the rubbery monster
no.
nesting tentacles flailing
Yeah.
about. You've got like a CGI pile of goo.
Hmm.
So
Uh,
that raises up and goes, Doctor.
yes.
but Rose wasn't the best episode of that first season in 2005, series one, but it was just like a welcome return because it's like it's the Doctor Who we remembered, and
Yeah.
that's what made it so special.
And I can really see that. So what's the next stop on our journey of
Journey
classic Who, Charles?
as their journey through time and
Yes,
space.
yes.
We're now heading because it didn't feel like fair to like just burn through Pertwee episode after Pertwee episode because it would take a long time for us to get to Tom Baker.
Yeah.
So we're jumping right ahead into the Tom Baker era next time with Pyramids from Mars.
Now,
Uh,
you're specifically not going to just pick the first episode
This
of
one,
each doc.
this one's episode 8
Okay.
of the Tom Baker era. So we're a little bit ahead
Mhm.
into Tom Baker's run because Tom Baker's first episode, Robot, um, isn't a great story.
Okay.
It's fun. You get the Brigadier's there. You got the Doctor regenerating
Hmm.
into the Forest Doctor. So you've got a lot going on, but it's not really a great story.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
so we're jumping into a good story, Pyramids of Mars.
So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to do this format where Charles kind of asks questions to get my impression. He's not going to tell me why he picked that specific episode till after I've seen it and we're discussing, so because he doesn't want to taint my opinion.
Right, one
Uh,
way or the other.
we are going to continue for me doing a reverse the polarity, which I now understand
Yeah.
how much work I give Charles to do that.
So
Uh,
now you respect me.
yes, I
Yes.
do. I do respect you
So
so
yeah,
much.
because so now instead of reversing the polarity, we're reversing the reversing of the polarity.
Yes, we are. So just uh, once again, I could not pick a better episode. You were awesome. Thank you so much, Charles. Uh,
Thank you, Jesse. I'm,
we'll
I'm
be.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it.
Oh, I did. And so we're going to be back in a couple weeks. Then
Yep,
we'll do the Christmas special, and then we'll do another Journey in Time and Space, correct?
exactly. So yeah, come on back here around the 21st,
Yes.
I guess. We'll talk about Pyramids of Mars, and we'll also have a special guest star, won't we?
Yes, yes, we will. So we are getting very long on time, but we
Yes, we
do
are.
have time for you to tell where can people find you?
Really quick, I'm at Charles Skaggs on Twitter. I can be found on Facebook, Instagram, the Google Plus for all the crazy kids on the Google Plus, and my blog of sci-fi and geeky things, damn good coffee and hot. So where they find you, Jesse?
They can find me on my Facebook page, Jesse Jackson in Louisville, Texas. I'm at Twitter, JWJ170104. I feel like we should do a spin-off to talk about the um, uh, the alias casting or the Jessica Jones casting.
Yes, yes.
Um,
We can do. Well, maybe that could be another JKL Media
Yes.
podcast, as because I recently guest starred on that for that Jesse does with a special guest host Karen Lindsay here at Next Stop Everywhere. So had a lot of fun doing it with him, those two, and Lou. So
Yeah.
maybe we can do that there.
Yes, indeed. So please go to iTunes and give us a rating and review. We love hearing your feedback, so please send it to us. Thank you, Charles. So for now, I'm going to say keep hope alive and shoes. Must find my shoes. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Nice. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have fun. Bye.